Hi everyone, I'm Sandie La Nae. Welcome to Psychic Creation History Series. You are about to embark on a blast to the past. We have a very interesting program for you today as we are featuring the historic accounts of Lillian Virgin-Finnegan, who was a recognized citizen in Genoa, Nevada, for the organization of the annual Candy Dance. Portraying Lillian Virgin-Finnegan is Chautauqua performer Kim Harris. Hello and welcome, Lillian and Kim.
Well, thank you very much, Miss Lene. I'm so proud to be here today. It's an honor.
It's an honor to have you with us. Well, first off, Lillian, would you please tell our viewers all about yourself and your place in history?
Oh, I'd be very happy to. I'm a citizen of Genoa in Carson Valley, and I'm very proud of the community in which I live because it is a community of volunteerism and families, and everything that I've been involved in my life has been part of that, is working with the community and volunteerism. My family are pioneers. Did you know that? I want to tell you about my family first because this is very important. My mother came all the way from Illinois, the oldest of 11 children, and she drove the wagon, and they arrived in Genoa in 1863. And my grandmother, Ellen, her mother, was pregnant with the 11th child at that time. And the idea was to go on to the gold country. But Grandma said, nope, I'm going no further. So that's how our family came to Genoa.
Oh.
And Father came a few years later. He was an attorney, and he rented space from the Raycraft Hotel. That was my mother's family's hotel. They were the Raycrafts.
Mm-hmm.
And he rented space there and met my mother and fell in love. And
Aw.
then bought the little brick house on the corner of Main and Carson. That was Lucky Bill Thornton's house. That's a sad story about Lucky Bill Thornton. Maybe we'll tell that another day.
Okay.
And then they had 3 children. They had my sister Ellen, my brother William, and then I was the youngest, born in 1877. Now, I have very fond memories of living in Genoa, but not necessarily in that particular house, and I'll tell you why. Genoa has had a lot of triumphs, and we've had a lot of fun, and we've done a lot of community things together, but we've had tragedies. And one of the biggest tragedies we had was in 1882. There was a tremendous avalanche that came barreling down Genoa Canyon. And it took some houses with it and trees and boulders, and it took 7 lives.
Oh.
And I was only 5 years old, but I do remember it being a sad time, particularly for me, because my little playmate friend, Paulina Borland, she was taken in that tragedy.
Oh, I'm
And it was
sorry.
very hard for her family because they had lost their younger daughter only a few years before.
Mm.
So it was very difficult. But also, that was my first memory of the community working together. I remember Lawrence Frey. He owned a ranch right there on, well, what is now Genoa Lane. It used to be Boyd's Toll Road.
Oh,
But
uh-huh.
it was originally Colonel Reese's property, and he was the first settler of Mormon Station, which is what Genoa was called in 1851.
Right.
But Lawrence, he took his cattle, and he took them back and forth across the street to pack down all the snow and debris so that people could get back and forth and look for the people that might have been lost in the tragedy. And people raised money for the Borland family, and they were hoping they'd stay. He had a bakery at the building that's now the Masonic building, but the tragedy was too great and they needed to leave. And this was 1882. Well, you can imagine for the next 2 years, our house was okay, but the snow and the avalanche came down into our backyard, destroyed our barn, Father's orchard, and Mother, for the next 2 years, kept saying, I can't live here. I'm so afraid of living here. So when J.R. Johnson's home was available, and that was on the corner of Boyd's Toll Road and Main Street. It had been Colonel Reese's house too. He had moved it, J.R. Johnson had moved it down Mill Street and added onto it, and it was a beautiful pink color, about the same color as my dress.
Mm, oh, nice.
As a little girl, I always admired it as a beautiful Victorian, a Gothic Victorian. And when that became available, Father, I think he did it for me.
No.
But we were able to move into what I lovingly called the Pink House.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes, we have so many fond memories. Father had an orchard. We had a stone cellar that Mother would open up every 4th of July, and she would serve her famous raspberry shortcake with ice cream for the whole town, and people loved her raspberry shortcake.
I can imagine so.
Well, I had many playmates, and I really enjoyed growing up there, but our family was very serious about two things. The law, because Father was a lawyer and the first judge to sit on the bench at the new courthouse that was built in 1865. Started in 1864 when we became a state. He was the first judge to sit there. The law was important to our family, but so was education. And Ellen and William and I were encouraged from a very young age to always have no limits to what we wanted to do and what we wanted to achieve. And community service was a very important part of that, but so was education. And Father also served as superintendent of schools for most of his life. And everybody, even though everybody always called him Judge Virgin, nobody called him Daniel Webster Virgin or D.W. Virgin. He was always Judge Virgin. So my sister Ellen and I chose the same vocation, school teacher, and we both graduated from the normal school program at the Nevada State University.
Oh.
And Ellen in 95 and myself in 97. And I first taught at Clear Creek in Ormsby County, and then later in Douglas County at Glenbrook. I remember taking my students around the lake on the SS Tahoe. It was a lovely trip. It's so sad that it is being used just as a mail ship right now. It's very sad because it was a beautiful steamer. But then eventually in 1907, I met and married my husband, Lewis Finnegan. He was always thought to be a wealthy miner from Tonopah, but actually he had mining interests. He was never actually in the mines himself. But my brother William met him when he was in Tonopah and brought him home to Genoa to meet the family. And there we were married in the garden of the Pink House. But I could no longer be a school teacher because it wasn't possible with our travelings. We immediately left on a honeymoon for California and San Francisco and up the California coast. And it was lucky that in 1907, at the time that we got married, that San Francisco, after the earthquake, was being rebuilt very quickly. So it was very interesting seeing that city. But we traveled quite a bit, and sometimes we lived in Tonopah and sometimes Goldfield. But when we came home to Genoa, we always wanted to stay with my parents, but we didn't want to crowd them out. So Lewis built a lovely little cottage out behind the house to the south side of the house. And as a thank you gift, he also built them a veranda for our house, which the veranda is just beautiful in the summer to sit out there and have the birds singing and the wind in the trees. So I have very fond memories of growing up in Genoa and also coming back to Genoa. But I always stayed involved in the community. One of the things I'm most proud of was helping to get the right for women to vote in Nevada. Now, we worked for a few years on this. Several of the women in Carson Valley and Genoa. We were the Douglas County Equal Franchise Society. And by 1914, we were able to get Nevada to pass women's vote. Now, it was always important in Carson Valley and many parts of Nevada, women's opinion. Many husbands would come to their wives and ask their opinion on certain things they were going to vote on that had to do with women's issues and family issues. So we were always respected, but now we not only had our influence at the polls, we also had our own vote. So that was very important to us.
Nice.
And we were friends with Governor Emmett Boyle, Lewis and I were, and he was behind women's rights. As a matter of fact, he kept pushing, and he was very instrumental in 1920 for the national vote for women. I did not know if you knew that, but that's true.
Oh.
And he was very instrumental in 1915 in getting a teacher's bill passed so that teachers' pensions could be a bit more than they were the years before. He was very, very strong with education.
Mm-hmm.
But the years, they rolled past, and of course the Great War came, and it affected us in Douglas County. It affected us deeply. Several hundred, 1,200 of our boys went off to fight in the war, and many did not come home. But Lewis and I, and many of the women and men in Douglas County, remained very active with the Red Cross. Do you know Lewis went to Reno one day and ordered a machine that could make socks for the soldiers because he wanted to help me knit socks. That is how dedicated my husband Louis was. So we did a lot of things for the Red Cross. One of the things that my Aunt Jane, my Mother Mary's sister, Aunt Jane Raycraft Campbell, we came up with an idea for a fantastic fundraiser. And this was 1918. We decided if we threw a dance and invited the whole town and everybody around in Carson Valley and Reno and anybody who wanted to come, we would charge admission. We would have a midnight supper right there, buffet supper right there in the Raycraft Dance Hall, which was right on Main Street across from the hotel. And we would have the Baker's 5-piece band orchestra play. And Aunt Jane made this lovely, lovely cake. And we cut it into pieces and sold it at 25 cents a piece. And we hid a gilded donkey somewhere inside. It was Mr. Cardinal won the gilded donkey. But we had such a wonderful time. We started at 9 o'clock. At midnight we had the supper. And by 5 in the morning everybody was tired and ready to go home. But it was very successful. The paper, the newspaper, the Record Courier, the next day reported everything that went on and how much money we made. We profited $255. And that was after expenses, after we paid the band and after we paid for any expenses that anybody had. So that money went to the Red Cross of Douglas County. Now, not many people were having dances and festivities during that time period because the war and the great influenza affected so many people.
Sure.
But around Thanksgiving, where somebody in Carson Valley always threw a Thanksgiving ball, we asked if we could have the ball in Genoa, and we would have the ball in the Raycraft Dance Hall. And the ladies of Genoa said that they wanted to get together and make their very favorite recipe of candy because they remembered me telling them back when Louis and I were just married and we'd gone on a cruise and they'd passed out homemade candy and that was really a delicacy. And they said, what if we all make our own candy and we have it there at the dance hall and we'll have a midnight supper, but let's go over to the Raycraft Hotel and we can use crystal and we can use the linen and the silver and make it a real special affair. And let the soldier boys come to the dance for free.
Oh.
It was so successful because everybody got involved in this. It wasn't just Aunt Jane and I throwing this party. It was everyone. I'm somewhat disappointed with the Record Courier, however. I know Bert Selkirk, the editor, he was not there that week. Not only did they get the date of the paper wrong that day, but there was this very small article about our dance, and it said, it was a fun dance, it was well attended, and the food was good at the midnight supper. What they didn't report is how much money we raised.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk to Bert about it, but it was all water under the bridge by the time he returned to the paper. But we raised far more money in 1919 at that Thanksgiving ball than we did in 1918. And the ladies and myself, we sat down, and what had been something that stuck in our craw, I have to admit, for quite some time, was the fact that we couldn't seem to raise enough money to purchase electrically lit streetlights.
Oh.
So we decided why not put that money towards the streetlights. And we were able to purchase 3 streetlights and the electricity to operate them. But a few months later, we looked at each other and we said, how are we going to keep these streetlights lit and how are we going to be able to keep them? Well, some smart woman in the group, probably was Aunt Jane Raycraft Campbell, said, well, we had such a successful dance, let's do it again. So in 1920, around the same time, we threw another dance, but we had kind of been lovingly referring to that first dance in 1919 because of the candy that everybody just enjoyed. We were calling it the candy dance. But we thought that was a great idea. So we just forevermore called it the candy dance. We're in our 13th year this year, 13 years. This September is going to be our 13th candy dance. And this isn't the first time that I've been to Carson City. Maybe the first time this year, but we usually drive around, the ladies and myself, and we sell tickets.
Oh.
And I'm surprised that I haven't run across you before. Have you ever been to our candy dance?
Yes, I have.
You have?
Uh-huh.
Well, then perhaps you bought your ticket from maybe Elziet Selby.
I think that was her.
Okay, because Elsiette has her own car and so do I. So we kind of split up and we go all over the valley in Carson City selling our tickets.
Nice.
We have a wonderful time doing it. We have so much fun. We giggle and laugh. And then when we make candy, oh my goodness, every surface in my house is filled. There's a tray, any blank surface in the house, the beds, the couches, the dining room table, the buffet, everything is filled with candy. But we have so much fun, so I want to invite you this year to the candy dance.
Well, I will certainly be there. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I purchase a ticket from you?
Yes, I'll make a special trip back out here so you can purchase a ticket
Thank you.
from me.
That will be fun.
But thank you so much for having me here today. This has been quite a treat. I rarely get out of Genoa nowadays. We're just so busy with so many things. I do want to also let you know that we finally have finished the church that burned down in 1910. Remember that 1910 fire? It was horrible.
It was.
Half of the town burned down. They rebuilt the courthouse right away, so Father was happy about that. But 6 months it actually took. But the church, they put the church back together, but they put it on the other side on the other block on Nixon Street. But it wasn't paid off, not until recently when we raised enough money through subscriptions.
Oh.
But what sticks in every citizen's craw is the fact that they have not rebuilt the oldest building in town, and that was Mormon Station. And I know it was being used as a pigsty, but it was the oldest building in Nevada. And the county will not give us the funds, nor will the state of Nevada, to rebuild it. So that is my next mission, is to have that building rebuilt. You know, if I still have a moment, I just thought of a funny story. In 1882, there is nothing humorous about that avalanche. Nothing humorous at all.
True.
Mr. Dake, he himself lost his undertaker's parlor, but at least his house was saved. It's almost as if the avalanche went right around the house.
It did?
But in 1910, here's a cute story that I always giggled at when my father would retell it. Mrs. Hanson, her husband had a saloon right there on the north side, on the west side of the North Division on Main Street, which burned down. Well, her house was about where Mormon Station Stockade was, okay? There's nothing there now. And her house caught on fire. So Father immediately ran across the street with several neighbors. And they were we didn't have a fire department. We still don't. We still depend on Gardnerville's volunteer fire department 10 miles south of town. That's another mission that I'm on. But while they were on their way, they wanted to save Mrs. Hanson's house. So they were using buckets of water to put out the fire, but also, just in case they couldn't save the house, everybody was running inside and taking out the furniture and anything they could get their hands on that was valuable. And Mrs. Hanson would pick it up and take it right back in. Oh, you hadn't heard about Mrs. Hanson? She's the former Mrs. Champagne. Mr. Champagne was another saloon keeper. But Mrs. Hanson, when she was Mrs. Champagne, she and her daughters had been accused of arson for profit. They would set fire to their homes and their structures for insurance money. Now, by 1910, that had all died down. But that one incident where they could not keep her under control and they took her to the south end of town and locked her up in somebody's home. And they saved the house, thank goodness, because Mr. Hanson lost his saloon in the fire. Sure. But that started the rumors all again. So I always, and here's another funny story, really quickly. My grandmother Ellen, my grandmother and grandfather were they were from Ireland.
Okay.
Very strong Irish Catholics. And when the fire started, remember, it was on the north side of town, but the Raycraft Hotel was on the south block of town, of Main Street. So she grabbed her holy water, and then she sprinkled it all around the property. And to the day she passed, she passed in 1912. But to the day that she passed, she believed that she had saved the town of Genoa by sprinkling holy water. And we let her believe that.
Well, okay.
I just wanted you to hear some funny stories too, because we ladies, especially when we get together, we're serious about our missions, but we have so much fun.
Well, you do.
You should join us sometime, Miss La Nae. You should join us.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I will do that.
Well, very good. Well, thank you again for having me here.
Well, thank you so much.
I certainly enjoyed myself. You should come for tea sometime.
I will do that. Well, Lillian, thank you so much for your position in the historic annals of Northern Nevada.
My pleasure.
Now, you, Miss Kim Harris, when did you become interested in history, and particularly about Lillian Virgin-Finnegan?
Well, I always credit my father and a few good teachers in school that made history fun. Because all of us have had teachers that have handed us a history book, said read chapter 11 or 12 and come back and recite the dates that this and that happened. I believe it kills the interest in history. So I was very fortunate. And Lillian Virgin-Finnegan in particular, I live in Genoa. I live a couple blocks down the street from the historic Pink House. And all I ever heard about Lillian was she started the candy dance. And the candy dance is literally now, this year will be its 99th year in operation. And so it is a big thing. People come from all over, from Reno, from Tahoe, from California. They come for 2 days, and now it's a fair. And the dinner is so big, it's held outside in the town park, and they have a band, and it's amazing how many thousands of people come to it. But I kind of, I wondered, why was she the go-to person? Why did they go to her to come up with an idea to raise money for streetlights? And that's what the very first dance did, is it raised money for streetlights, a town that didn't have electrically lit streetlights. And so in 2019 will be its 100th year.
Isn't that something?
It is. It's amazing that it's gone on that long. And what very talented sculptress in town asked the same questions that several people on my walking tour asked. There in town is a statue of Snowshoe Thompson, who was very important pioneer to the history of Genoa and Carson Valley, and that's a story for another day. But hearing about the candy dance, most people know about it and said, why isn't there a statue of Lillian? And so Deborah Smedley, a talented sculptress, said that herself. So she embarked on a very Lillian Virgin-Finnegan-ish thing to do, gathered the ladies of Genoa together, and some men got involved too, to raise funds to erect a statue. So next year, a 7-foot statue of Lillian Virgin-Finnegan, basically in 1920s era, is going to be set on the Main Street, the four-way intersection. For those of you who are familiar with the small town of Genoa, we have one four-way intersection, and it'll be on the northwest corner, right in front of the hotel. And people can donate money and get a brick for a $200 donation with your name in it, and be forever memorialized in Genoa. So I'm proud to say that I'm the ambassador. Now the statue was already in the works, so it's not a design of me, but I'm the ambassador. So that's what I've been doing, is I've been making appearances as Lillian Virgin-Finnegan. And some of the other places that I've portrayed her, because I portrayed her for a few years, that's how they ended up asking me, is I portrayed at Genoa Cowboy Festival. Different organizations, for instance, Soroptimist International, or the Republican Women of Reno, and other organizations like that have had me come and do a variation of it. But it got started when at the Douglas County Historical Society in 2014, we were celebrating the women's right to vote. And so that year, there were 4 of us that were Chautauquans that were instrumental. And it was 2 of us from Douglas County, Dr. Cook and Lillian Virgin-Finnegan. When I was asked to portray her, I looked at the president of the organization, and I was on the board at that time, and I said, she started the candy dance. What does that have to do with women's right to vote? And I found out she was on the Douglas County Equal Franchise Society committee, and she was a suffragette, and all of this influence that she had in the community, for community organizations, for the betterment of the community. And that answered the question. That is why she was the go-to gal to help organize these dances, because she also didn't have a family to take care of. Lillian never had children, and she didn't have a ranch or a business to run, so she had a little bit more freedom to move about and do the marketing for any of these things.
Sure, right.
Yes. So I enjoy portraying her. I get to portray her at different ages. I portray her sometimes in 1914, sometimes in 1919, 1920, and today was 1933, so she would have been 53 years old, which is my age, and she did pass when she was 59, almost 60.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so she wasn't around much longer past the performance today.
Okay.
Yeah, so anyway, but I hope that answers your question.
Well, I think you answered that expertly.
Now, if anybody is interested in having me come perform as Lillian,
Sure.
You can check out my website, and it's westernhistoryalive.com. I can be reached at kim@westernhistoryalive.com, or you can call me at 775-220-0605. But when you go to my website, you will see that I do a few other characters as a Chautauquan, and maybe Lillian wouldn't fit, but maybe a stagecoach driver, Charlie Darky Parkhurst, would fit, or maybe the most famous working girl in Virginia City, Julia Boulay, might be your choice. So I invite you to come to my website. Thank you.
Very good. You really enjoy being a Chautauquan performer.
I do enjoy bringing history alive to, especially to folks that may not have the time to sit down and open up a book and just read a book about a certain era in history.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I try to do is give them an idea of what a real person would have been like and the things that affected them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's my honor to do this, and thank you very much for having me here so that I can share that with other people. Your show is fabulous. I think it's a great venue. Just as a Chautauquan, it's a great venue to help people discover history that they never heard about before your
That's
show.
true.
Yeah.
Well, because you and I have been friends for so many years, and I have seen all of your Chautauquan portrayals, I have learned so much about history from you. It's phenomenal, and it's so interesting.
Well, and vice versa, because of the people that you have on your show.
Yeah.
And I do want to say this, because Sandie and I are on, and along with a few other members, are a part of a paranormal investigation team. And I've been asked several times, do I feel that I'm influenced by the characters that I portray? 100%. There's a friend of ours who does a lot of research for us, Arlene LaFerry, who you have written books with, and
Mm-hmm.
she's helped do the research, and she's with the Nevada State Historical Society. She even says that when she's looking for something and has no idea where to find it, all of a sudden she'll put her finger on it. I will sit down and look back at monologues when I reread them, and I wonder how I wrote them. And I hope that Lillian, for instance, is with me when I'm trying to put her story together. And I'm not saying she thinks I'm, all that in a bag of chips, but I'm thinking that she at least wants me to get her story right. So I believe she influences me, and I hope she was here today, and I hope she enjoyed talking with you too.
I think she did, because I can feel her energies around you.
Good.
So she's very proud of you.
Good. Well, I'm very proud to portray such an upstanding woman. It's probably the only upstanding person I do portray. And that was hard to find her. It was. It was hard to find how to play her, because she wasn't naughty. But when I heard that she was fun, oral history with Beatrice Fedex Jones. In her oral history, Beatrice was a lot younger. Bea was a lot younger than Lillian, so Lillian was more like an aunt to her. But she says, I always remember laughing at Lily's house. So when I heard that she had a great sense of humor, I thought, she really is human.
Oh, how fun.
Anyway.
Well, again, thank you, Lillian and Miss Kim, for being on our show today. You were awesome.
Well, thank you,
Always
Sandie.
an awesome guest.
It's my pleasure to be here, and thank you very much for sharing our history with your viewers.
Oh, well, thank you that's very nice of you to say. Thank you so much for watching Psychic Creation History Series. If you would like to be a guest on our show, you can contact me at my website, which is www.sandypsychicstones.com, or at my email address, which is admin@sandypsychicstones.com. Once again, thank you for watching Psychic Creations History Series, and remember, history created who we are today.